Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at the Grand Water Trine that is forming in the sky right now between Venus, Saturn, and Mars. Venus in the sign of Scorpio is moving into a trine with Saturn and then moving into a trine with Mars. And so we are going to take a look at that dynamic today, even though it is not a perfect Grand Water Trine, meaning all three planets are not perfectly trine at the same time. They're all engaging with one another within that 3-degree range, and Venus is, in a sense, reconnecting Mars and Saturn through something called the translation of light. So just a basic idea that the connection that was recently made between Mars and Saturn is sort of being reiterated by the fact that Venus is going to hit Saturn and then Mars in close succession while the two are still separating. So technically speaking, even though it's not a perfect Grand Water Trine, we're very much going to have the experience of a Grand Water Trine, so we may as well talk about it. And so I'm going to give you 5 things to watch for today, given the really tremendous amount of water in the sky. And a few of those planets are also in conditions that are a little bit more tense due to their essential dignity. We'll talk about what that means as well and what to watch for. So that's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm hoping that by now we have crossed that 70,000 subscriber mark that we've been trying to get to. As of the time of the fall equinox, recently we were just less than 200 subscribers away. So we made it. I think probably by now we're probably across the finish line because I record these a little bit in advance. So thank you to everybody. And I guess let's push to 80 next. Let's just keep going. We really appreciate all of you who are part of our community and who find this channel a useful asset in your spiritual life and your growth as an astrology student. Can't say thank you enough. You all make this a really special place. So on that note, you can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. 2 promotions today, and we will move into our content. The first promotion is our live events page. If you go to events and click on live talks, you will see that for this month of October, the next is, there we go. The next is the myth of astrological compatibility on October 17th. What everybody gets wrong about the astrology of relationships, and I'm going to give you what I think are the simplest, most basic ways that you can actually gauge astrological compatibility and maybe throw away some gimmicky techniques that I don't really see working over the course of many clients and consultations that I've done over the years. So I hope that this will be kind of fun and spicy and tell you what I think works and doesn't. So check that event out on the 17th. If you can't attend live, you get the recording when you register for the webinar. And then I want to point you to our first year course, which begins on November 16th. Now, look, if you're brand spanking new to astrology, check out the Astrology for Beginners course. It's a brand new audio course. It's about 10 hours worth of content. And we've been getting really great feedback from people who have already taken this class. And most of the people who have taken this are registering now for the first year course. So that is fantastic. First year course starts on November 16th. Pre-registration sale is in effect until October 15th. So you can save a little bit if you register now before the 15th of October. Get a little discount on the early bird payments or installment plans for the course. And then there's need-based tuition assistance. So if you are someone who's on a fixed or limited income and you need a little help to make the program happen, be sure to apply for that. We have spots still available and are very glad to help people. We match your budget and put you on a monthly tuition plan that fits your requirements. And we have this available because we don't think astrology should be only for people of one income level. And we also believe that it's not healthy to make people go into debt or push themselves into bad positions to take a course that is really a part of a spiritual growth path. So we try to make sure our programs are accessible in that way. Please do apply for it and use it. That'll be available all the way up till the start of the course on November 16th. Just click apply now. Tell us your situation. We'll be glad to set you up with a special payment plan. Okay. Now, on that note, at the end of today's talk, if you stick around, there will be a special informational video at the end of this video after the content is done, where for about 10 minutes, I tell you all about the first year program, what it includes, what the experience is like, what our class website looks like that houses all the material. It's all live, but it's recorded as well. So you can move at your own pace or attend the live webinars and you can learn more about it afterward. Okay, that is it for promotions for the day. I'm very excited to be taking a look at this Grand Water Trine. So let us go into the real-time clock. So here is what we're dealing with. Coming off from the eclipse, it's already been a busy week. And here we are on Thursday, and we can see that Venus is moving into a trine with Saturn. And then we'll shortly move into a trine with Mars. Now, the two here are still within 3 degrees of separating, Mars and Saturn, that is. And so we have effectively a grand water trine. It's all within 3 degrees. And even though it's not exact, this is still a very powerful configuration, not to be underestimated. So what does this timeline look like? Let's start with that. So if we move forward a day, we're going to see that the trine forms tomorrow, Friday, October 4th. Then if we move forward over the weekend, while the moon is in Scorpio, by the way, we will see that Venus starts coming into the trine with Mars in Cancer. That exact trine will perfect between Sunday and Monday. That's when you're really going to feel it. And it's, by Monday, October 7th. So if we spread that out, we're looking at today, Thursday, October 3rd. You could have been feeling this really yesterday under the eclipse. And the eclipse, remember, is ruled by this Venus who is making this grand water trine and thus very intimately connected to the overall significations of the eclipse, as we've talked about in several of the videos that we've looked at this week already. Now, here is the connection to Saturn again. That's really happening on Friday. And then we see the connection on Monday between Venus and Mars. By Tuesday morning, it's just separating. So that, if we spread that out then and give a little bit of a separation range for Venus, that means we're talking about all the way until Friday, October 11th, that Venus is officially moving through the configuration of this grand water trine because of its separation range from Mars. Then it's really interesting. We'll be talking about this next week. Venus will be moving right into an opposition with Uranus, a simultaneous trine to Neptune, and the sextile to Pluto, which many planets are going through because those 3 outer planets are configured to one another this autumn. And remember, I said that this makes it a very powerful culmination for Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, and a very powerful autumn in general, because so many planets are going through configurations to all 3 of these planets almost simultaneously. When all 3 planets, all 3 of the outer planets are involved in major configurations for several months at a time, it's like, wow, you know, that's going to be, it's like some deeper, heavier plates moving around. And for many of us, especially coming off the eclipse in Libra, we're really going to feel some of this stuff here. So yeah, I mean, today we're looking at this grand water trine though. So let me turn this off and get my handy list up. 5 things to watch for. Grand water trines. First of all, let's just focus on the most basic element of this, which is water. So what do we know about water? My kids recently, I've convinced them to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know if you guys have seen this show before, but when I was living in New York, and I guess I was like 29 or 30 years old, like it was probably my Saturn return actually. For whatever reason, I can't remember who got me into it, but I started watching it and I was like, I'm an adult and I'm loving this cartoon. Like it's just, and it's fantastic because the characters are all working with the manipulation of the 4 elements. And it's very yogic. And there's a lot of lessons that you learn about life. It feels a little Taoist to me. And it has this kind of really deep way of unpacking things about the 4 elements, which for me, at the time, I was just entering my practice of astrology when I saw this show, and it had a big impact on me because it taught me a lot about the elements. And I'm serious, like watch this. If you haven't seen it before, like check it out. It's a fun show. Anyway, so my kids are watching this and there's water bending. You know, water bending is where these certain characters that have this skill can manipulate the element of water. And it's really beautiful. All the lessons that they learn and everything like that. The reason that I bring this up is because I feel like right now, especially in a trine, trines are fluid, right? So we're connecting 3 planets through 3 trines. So we call it a grand water trine. But trines are also of the nature of Jupiter, which is flowing and smooth and harmonious, and generally thought of as beneficial or fortunate or easy or something like that. But 2 of the planets in this grand water trine are debilitated: Mars in Cancer, Venus in Scorpio. Little tension going on with those planets. I'll say more about that in a minute. The point being that there's a real ability here for us to water bend. And by that, I mean to have a conscious, sort of intentional relationship with an element. We don't think about it that way. We just think, oh, it's emotions. No, it's better of thinking of emotions as water than thinking of water as emotions, because emotions are just one of the many qualities of water. And so in a moment like this, for astrologers, it is really a fantastic moment to understand the element of water, understand one of its manifestations as emotions, and hence maybe the development of better emotional skills, better emotional maturity, greater emotional sensitivity or tact, greater emotional depth and vulnerability, emotional release, surrender, and healing, processing of grief and trauma in ways that are constructive and growth oriented, all of which is an absolutely fine understanding of water. But there's also other layers of water that are really important. Like water is about instinctual sensitivity. For example, many of us, and this happens to me all the time, I think that's probably why I was born with the sun and Mercury in Cancer. I will be like in a mood and I won't know how I got there. I'm just in a mood, and moods are very watery too. So if I have to stop and go, wait, how did I get here? And if I reflect on it a little bit, I'll realize, oh, this thing came into the environment, a piece of news, a person, a conversation, whatever it is, or I came into an environment somewhere outside my home or something. God forbid a Cancer ever leaves his home. But then, oh, that impacted my moods and feelings. And I have subtly been nervous or afraid or irritated, or I have been feeling rushed, or whatever the feeling might be. We don't always know what caused it. Waterbending is about not just thinking of emotions, but thinking of the instinctual sensitivity and responsiveness of life itself. That life itself is like water moving. And that if we take the time during a grand water trine like this, there's a perfect opportunity to check in and go, how have things, and probably big things, big patterns, lots of complicated pieces that are moving together in this big trine, right? 3 different planets, 3 different areas of life, 3 different archetypal fields. We can suddenly see, oh, this is how this particular pattern or person or thing changes the mood and environment. And with that awareness comes the ability to like waterbend. We can go, okay, like now I have some agency. I have a little bit more reflective awareness of what is shifting or causing my mood to be what it is. And then we can address how we're feeling, because now I know. Now I'm taking a moment to actually feel my feelings. So I know what I'm feeling. And I reflect on what created the shift. All of that develops instinctual awareness. One of the ways that depth psychologists talk about the element of water, like Jung would talk about it this way, would be like an instinctual psychic intelligence. It's not just emotional, in other words. It's like, have you ever noticed, I've noticed this before, like I will be getting excited about something and my dog, and I'm excited, like I'm in like a good mood, I'm super pumped about something. But my dog, who's resting, will get up and move to the other room and lay down. And I'll go, well, even though I'm excited, that energy level instinctually for her is disturbing, right? So that level of like kind of instinctual, environmental, responsive awareness, that's water. So what can happen and the reason I use water bending is because greater awareness of those complex fields of emotional dynamism in our life can really bring something special. When I was first becoming a parent, I'm sure all of you can relate to this. I realized really quickly that even if same thing with a baby, right? If you're excited, they could get scared just because you're excited. And even though my emotion feels positive, that excitement to them may not feel positive. Oof, that really changed my life, honestly. Or just like how fast I would be talking about something, or how if something bothered me, like one of the reasons I stopped watching the news was because I noticed that the quality of my consciousness after I watched the news was disturbing to my children and more or less my wife. So it was like, I mean, she could hang and like talk about stuff, but I just noticed like if I'm in the mood to like debate or have passionate takes on the news, even if I'm not angry at anyone or ripping anyone or like being mean or anything, just the intensity of the energy. So that felt sense of how things are being received, how things are shaping and shifting the environment around us in very subtle ways. It's like we're fish in water and we don't know it. So one of the great promises I wanted to start with before I go into my 5 things is just like, this is a moment where we can become water benders. That was the image that's just floating around my mind because I'm watching my kids enjoy this show Avatar. So hopefully that made some sense. The other thing that's important to recognize is that a moment of all of these watery fields coming together can make us aware of how big things that have a lot of history have affected moods and environments. It's amazing how all of a sudden, I'll give you an example. I had a very powerful transit in my life when Saturn, all the way back when Saturn was in Cancer. And it was hitting, Mercury and the sun in my chart, because I got those in Cancer or whatever. And I remember all of a sudden, and this was right after I had gotten sober as a young person and was working with ayahuasca for the first time and just becoming very sensitive about the environment in general. Like many people become a lot more emotionally sensitive if they work in a therapeutic setting, right? They come out of the healing from a therapeutic model or paradigm, and they're just much more sensitive, and their body is much more sensitive. A lot of people experience that as a very difficult result of getting sober. In fact, that the increased sensitivity is something that is, for a time can be really hard to deal with. Anyhow, and I started realizing, like, oh my God, I actually don't like the way that soda feels in my body and even in my mouth. Like, it started tasting like chemicals. And it was like I had never had that awareness before. I'm not telling you shouldn't drink soda. Like, if you drink soda, that's fine. I have no judgments about it whatsoever, I promise you. But it just, for me, in my body, I realized, oh my God, I don't drink water. I'm drinking soda all the time. And it was like, wow, it doesn't feel good. That was a huge, like, coalescence of an instinctual, bodily, sensual, like, an awareness of how something actually feels. Isn't it incredible when that happens, when we go, oh, this is how it actually feels. Oh, and then we can make change. Then we can water bend. We're aware of the environment that's been somewhat invisible or subtle. It's not just feelings. Feelings are like a byproduct of this subtler thing. The instinctual, responsive, like biomatrix, that's like water. Oh, soda doesn't feel good. So that was a Saturn and Cancer lesson for me that came along with a lot of other lessons that I started learning about diet, about sleep, about exercise, meditation. This doesn't feel good. The way I'm living my life actually doesn't feel quite right. So big coalescence of fields of water can actually correspond to recognizing the things that do or do not make us feel good. It's like a byproduct of things swimming in the environment that we've not been aware of, which is also why water has this very interesting connection to the unconscious. But usually it's the unconscious in relation to the psychosomatic, physical, sensual, embodied reality that we're in. How do things make us feel as physical beings? This is so connected to water. All right, so the 5 things that I would say we should watch for. 1 would be a point of emotional release. This is a way of describing everything I've already described. All of these are. So a point of emotional release would be a way of looking at almost like a congregation, a gathering, a filling up of a bucket of water, and then a pouring out of that bucket. It's as though things that have been building and building and building momentum emotionally are ready to be expressed or released. The release could be a very positive thing, but it could also be a big emotional outburst of some kind, a meltdown, a breakdown, a release of pent-up energy. So there's lots of ways of conceiving what an emotional release might look like or feel like. My encouragement would be not to judge it. How it's like no one would judge the way a wave crashes against a rock. When it's big and powerful, no one goes, oh, that was a little out of line with the way it usually happens. We're so hard on ourselves. I think the best we can do if these emotional releases come in powerful, kind of cathartic ways, is to just be really graceful and merciful and compassionate with ourselves and other people, and make sure we take time to reflect and process things as they're releasing or after they release if we don't have so much control during the moment, which is fine. Number 2, a point of great fertility. See, when water all comes together, one of the other ancient meanings of water is fertile. Like, if, again, I don't at all mean to judge anyone who smokes. I had the experience early on during that same exact transit. This was right as I was getting sober in my early 20s from some addictive patterns. And ayahuasca was the big thing, big catalyst for me. Psychedelics and entheogens really helped me paradoxically get sober. And so these were ceremonial, like conscious, safely held spaces with, in the very beginning, mostly like actual indigenous curanderos. So there's that context. I think that's important. Anyhow, the awareness of like, oh, smoking cigarettes, this does not feel good. This really doesn't feel good. And not only that, but I could feel that there was a kind of fertility. I know this is going to sound really gross, but I could actually almost like see and feel the early seeds of like tumors and cancer, which grow in, they're like plants. It's a kind of life form that grows. Sure, it's like we call it a disease or it's not something that we think of as a positive form of life because it kills and like that, right? It's almost like mold on the bread or rot or something like that, but it's still living. And water, like grand water trines, can show you what's growing that's either like powerful and beautiful. Like it's a very fertile transit for like getting pregnant, very beautiful things that can grow because of all of the water. Water brings life. But that kind of deep, dark water is also where death grows, the close proximity between life, water, and water and death are just remarkable from an elemental standpoint. You think of stagnant water and what grows in it, that kind of thing. So what's great about a grand water trine with 2 debilitated planets, let's come back to those debilitated planets, Mars in Cancer and Venus in Scorpio, is that they can make us aware of the toxic things that are growing in something like stagnant water. They can make us aware of elements in the environment, whatever they might be, or whoever they might be, or whatever, that are bringing things to life and developing and gestating things that are toxic. And the awareness of it through the grand water trine is beneficial, even though some of the toxic elements might be reflected by things like debilitated planets. That doesn't mean that they're bad. Everyone always makes the mistake of thinking that when we say debilitated planet, we mean that there's something wrong if you have Venus and Scorpio in your chart. No, there's so many different things that planets can signify, many so beautiful even with a debilitated planet, but there's also reasons for the debilitation and why it ends up representing things like Mars in Cancer representing, violence toward women. So we have to be able to carry this nuanced way of understanding dignities and debilities that are not black or white, but that also don't whitewash the usefulness of the categories either. Anyhow, a great point of fertility could mean good things are growing. It could also mean you got to be careful of what's growing, and maybe there's some positive way in which you can recognize it right now and do something about it. Number 3 is a point of depth and processing of grief or trauma. Water is the holder of memories. This is really interesting because water connected with the moon is reflective, just like the moon is. And reflection, anything that has reflective capacity or properties for ancient mystics, was associated with memory, because memory is, in a sense, a copy or reflection of an original. So when planets get together in a grand water trine like this, there is a possibility to emotionally process the past, or a point of catharsis emotionally with respect to the processing or holding of grief, memories, ancestral history, trauma, that has a way of living on in us, but now maybe we could maybe confront it or deal with it or address it constructively. Number 4 would be a point of impact in family karma. Remember, Mars in Cancer is debilitated here. So you also get the idea that there might be some particular way, and some of this ancestral memory trauma is connected to family dynamics, parental dynamics, ancestral dynamics. Watch for that as a little inflection point with Mars in Cancer. And then number 5 would be emotional manipulation or coercion versus maturity. The other thing is that sometimes what happens, because we're all at different stages of awareness and conscious growth, and we're all learning in different ways, you know? So sometimes grand water trines come together and we're overwhelmed by emotions, but we're not getting into that water bending level where we're trying to develop an awareness of how am I feeling? Where is this coming from? How can I relate consciously with what I'm feeling? And so when that all comes up unconsciously, you have big waves of emotion and you have an inability to process with some sort of reflective maturity. And so you just get overly emotional, overly needy. You don't know how to reach out for what you need. You don't know how to articulate what you need. It's too much. It's honestly, it's overwhelming at times, right? And so what becomes easy is let me manipulate things and people or coerce emotionally to get what I need or to process what I'm feeling because it's too much and I don't know what to do. So I project or I try to manipulate. Those themes versus let's cultivate that awareness. Let's become waterbenders, you know? Let's develop some capacity to hold and work with these fields and develop healthy environmental patterns, healthier, or to process and find the places of stagnant water and try to move them. You know, it's like when you're camping, one of the things that I learned when I was a kid, so I did a lot of camping and backpacking and canoeing, was that if you are out in the wilderness and you have to get water, let's say you want to find water that's moving quickly and nice if it's like kind of moving right over the rocks and it's white and it's moving quickly because it's less likely to have stagnant bacteria in it. You know, the stagnation of a still piece of water in a pond or a river or something is less safe than finding something in a river where the water's moving quickly and it's even white, moving over, say, rocks or rapids or something. Collect your water there. If you can, obviously still boil it, but you see what I'm saying? Like the connection I'm trying to make here anyway is that we are trying to create an environment where there's flow and we're very cautious about things pooling off and becoming stagnant so that unhealthy things can grow outside of our conscious awareness. But even then, let's admit the unconscious has a role to play. Just like you can't, what are we going to do? Eliminate ponds and still pools of water or water in caves? Like, you know, it exists in nature. It's going to exist in us too. But when you're trying to survive and you're trying to make it out there, you know, try to get some movement, right? So life needs that movement. And we have to try to see how we can move sensitively and intelligently and be aware of the temptation to coerce or manipulate. So anyway, some thoughts for the day. I hope they're useful. Stick around after I sign off right now. You can learn about the upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It is our first-year program in Ancient Hellenistic Astrology. Begins on November 16th. The pre-registration sale is open until October 15th. I hope to see you in class. We have a really nice electional signature for this new group in November, which is the re-entrance of Pluto into Aquarius right as we are beginning our program. I can't tell you what a nice signature that is for studying astrology. In your year ahead, if you were to join us in November, you'd also be studying as Uranus enters Gemini and trines Pluto. So that airy connection is just very conducive to learning the language of astrology this year. If you are someone who loves this, can't get enough of it for yourself, or maybe you're thinking of practicing for others, either way, I encourage you to check it out. Listen to more info as I sign off here and hope to see you guys in classes soon. And otherwise, we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. Hey, everyone. I'm glad that you're sticking around to hear more about the Year 1 program that's coming up. The program starts on November 16th of this fall, and I am here today to tell you all that the program includes and why I think you really like it if you're thinking about studying astrology. So a few practical details about the course as well. The class begins November 16th, as I mentioned, but it takes place on Saturdays from 12 to about 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time. So that's 11 to 2 Central, and typically classes are about 2 hours long. Sometimes they run over with Q&A and discussion, but you can always plan for about 2 hours and you won't miss any of the actual lecture content for the day. You may have to duck out a little early if Q&A or discussion is extending. Sometimes it does, which is why we say between 2 and 3 hours, but typically it's around 2. All of the classes are recorded, so if you can't attend live, you are more than welcome to watch the recordings at your own pace and on your own time. You have lifetime access to the recordings, and everything is housed on a student website. I want to actually give you a just a little preview of what that student website looks like. So I am going to open up my own version of Thinkific, which is the platform that we use. So here's are some of my courses. These are all the Nightlight courses I teach. You can see on the page. But I'm going to tune into, let's go to Nightlight 28, which is the section that began in June of 2024. So here you're going to see that we have orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar. Everything that you need to know how to access the course is there. And you'll have a version of this in your own panel that you get set up with when you enroll. And then our lessons are laid out. So lesson 1, we have the video, the audio, the slides, the transcript. We have the Q&A box transcript so you can see what people were saying in the chat box during class. We have flashcards. We have a workbook. We have planet and sign glyph flashcards. We have bonus material, videos that we like from YouTube that we link you to. Say, check this video out, check that video out. They go along with some of the things we talked about in class. So every lesson has material for you to go as far as you want with, but the main thing is the video, audio, slides, transcript, etc. are all listed there so that you can download and watch it on your own time if you can't attend live. Again, the live classes do happen on Saturdays for this cohort, starting November 16th. That is our first day of class. And then going forward, it always meets on Saturdays, and we give you the class schedule to map out. And the breaks that we have, the study sessions that we have, everything's mapped out on the class calendar for you. So those are just a few practical details that, just to kind of start us off with. So I'm going to take you over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And I'm going to share with you some information about the program and sort of walk you through what it includes and what you can expect. So it is an almost year-long program. We typically finish between 10 and 11 months out of the year. It can depend a little bit on some of my teaching and scheduling because sometimes I teach at conferences and it may delay some of our modules by a week or something like that. But it's typically around 10 to 11 months that the program lasts. So we call it our first year program. At Nightlight, we have a program for absolute beginners. You may want to check that out if you are like brand spanking new. That would be 8 to 10 hours of content that's really meant to set you up for the first year course. We sort of assume that if you're coming into the first year program, you already know a little bit about astrology. For example, you have some familiarity with the signs, planets, and houses. Maybe you know what aspects are, but you want to learn more about what they are. But if you are really at the very total entry level space, then try Astrology for Beginners. And when you take that, you could do that right away and then join the first year course in November and you'd be perfectly set up for it. But anyhow, in this program, over the course of about a year, we work through 30 lessons that I lead. And those lessons are all 2 to 3 hours each, including lecture, a little break, and a Q&A portion where we open up for people to come on mic and camera and ask questions and have an interactive discussion about the material for the day. The program is broken into modules that cover a variety of topics in ancient Hellenistic astrology. That is the earliest era of horoscopic astrology. And so if you don't know a lot about the different schools of astrology, Hellenistic astrology is going to be the kind of astrology that you see a lot of astrologers practicing nowadays. It's become more popular in the last 30 years or so. And that is due to the fact that a lot of ancient texts with some of the original techniques of horoscopic astrologers were recently translated into the English language, and it's created this renaissance in terms of the use of ancient approaches to astrology. I have a background in modern psychological, archetypal, and evolutionary astrology, and so of course I bring those things to the table, but the course is primarily focused on the excavation of ancient techniques and the spiritual philosophy that ancient astrologers also espoused. The closest thing that I can tell you to what that looks like is, ask this question: do you resonate with the philosophy that you hear me take on my YouTube channel? If so, then you're going to love this course in terms of its philosophical and spiritual approach, because the spiritual approach to astrology that I teach is really at the heart of the program. And that's a big part of my life. I approach astrology from a spiritual standpoint. It doesn't belong to one religion or one particular school of thought, but you will hear me talking about things like the soul, the belief in the transmigration of the soul. You'll hear me talk about the need to be soul-centered in our client approach to counseling in astrology. You'll hear me have an appreciation for psychological dimensions of astrology, but also ancient astrology is really very, very good at developing your predictive capacity. We talk about what kinds of predictions are appropriate, how to make appropriate predictions, how to be the right kind of astrologer for our clients without inducing any fear. So there's a lot of care that goes into the development of this craft. But ancient astrology is really amazing when it comes to honing your predictive abilities. And then what you'll find is in this program, there's also a pretty significant emphasis on the psychological dimensions and client care. Anyhow, we go into the roots of ancient Hellenistic astrology and its techniques in this program, and the 30 classes are broken into modules. We work through the history and philosophy. We work through planets, houses, signs, aspects, essential and accidental dignities, and then we get into approaches to the delineation of natal charts. And then at the end of the program, almost a third of the program is dedicated to live client readings, where you're going to see me meet with a person and apply what we've been studying for an hour-long reading. We take a break, we come back, and then we workshop. How did I do that? Why did I make these choices? How did I handle this or that came up in the reading? And it becomes easily the favorite part for most students of the entire program, because by that point, you've got so much theory that you're really ready to see it put into action. We alternate those live client practice sessions with hands-on practice, where students get to bring chart questions into class that we work on. And that's also something that most people really love. A lot of people will look at the curriculum and say, well, I already know planets, houses, and signs and aspects and dignities. But not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology, because the approach that ancient astrologers had to these topics is vastly different from the approach that modern astrologers take. So you will be, in a sense, relearning basic things in a brand new way. And I think a much more enriching, deep, and philosophically clear way. It's really nice to know the why behind things. This program and Hellenistic astrology in general is very good at helping you understand the why behind everything that we do. Also, it's really important to participate when you study astrology in a living lineage. So one of the reasons I don't let people jump ahead to my second or third year programs is because I want you to be entrained to a lineage, a particular way of doing things that comes from an astrologer who has a very living, busy, active practice and who has had teachers themselves. I think that's important for astrological learning. That's the model that my own learning take, and so that's what I really want students to take away from my programs. Anyhow, so all of that aside, the second year program focuses, after we build our understanding of the basic delineation techniques of birth charts, in year 2, we move into timing techniques, which is all about when the karma of a birth chart is going to be active and expressing itself throughout the course of a lifetime. That's year 2. Year 3 focuses on the development of counseling skills at a much deeper level. And then we also have a 1-year horary program, which is about the development of a very specific predictive technique that can be a really amazing tool to add to your kit. That is 4 years worth of training programs that we have. However, I want to mention that many people take our classes just for the sake, purely for the sake of their own personal growth. Taking these programs is very much like being taught how to utilize a technology that for yourself will be deeply useful for the rest of your life, and maybe for close friends or family members around you. Many people come through our programs taking that benefit away and will study through all 4 years of our programs with no intention of being professional. This is their hobby. This is a spiritual tool that will have it will pay dividends over a long period of time. However, many people without the intention to practice come into our courses and discover that they're actually good at it and may end up reading for other people part-time. And then there are students who are deeply, intensely motivated to practice for other people. And it is not that our programs really make those people successful. Our programs contribute to your development, but it really is that some people have a calling to practice professionally. And these programs are designed to give you all the tools you need to develop that confidence and to develop a really coherent set of tools and to entrain yourself to a lineage, which you can also develop your own unique style out of. So those are some of the, the kinds of people that take our programs, you might say. So the 30 classes on the year are then broken into modules. And in between modules, we have 2 course directors who are present in all of the classes, and they lead breakout tutoring sessions where you can come in and review or ask questions about the module that we've just completed, which is usually anywhere between 2 and 3 classes each. So those breakout study sessions led by our tutors are outside of the 30 classes and very useful. A lot of people like to attend those because they also offer opportunity for community and just lively conversation. We also have 12 online webinar classes led by guest teachers that we host throughout the year. Those are free, and if you can't make them live, they're all uploaded into your student folder. You also have an interactive group forum discussion staffed with tutors who typically respond to questions that you have about the material within 24 hours. So if you can't attend a tutoring session or you just have a random question on a Tuesday night, you can pop it in there and you'll get an answer. We also have a ton of bonus material, optional quizzes, flashcards, tons of supplemental material that is there to help people go as deeply as they want. We have a reading list that is expansive. And that reading list, we don't expect anyone to accomplish. It's more so a resource that we give you saying, here, if you want to know all the things I've read, if you want to know all the things that I love, if you want to know all the things I recommend, here's a master list of everything for each lesson. You could go, PhD level if you wanted to and read thousands and thousands of pages, or you might find that there's just one extra book that looks really interesting and you want to pick it up. But we pride ourselves on making sure you have a ton of resources. You have lifetime access to all the class recordings. You can email our staff or me throughout the year with questions, and my staff will also defer to me in the case that they don't know the answer to a question. So that is what the program includes. It starts November 16th. If you would like to join, at the bottom between now and October 15th, our early bird payments are available. So that saves you some money off the cost of the course. There is a 12-month installment plan that is cheaper than our normal plan, a one-time payment that's significantly cheaper than our normal one-time payment. So you get these little sales that we do until October 15th. We also have need-based tuition assistance. So if you are someone who would like to take this program, but you are on a fixed or tight budget, we have an application there. Click apply now. Just tell us what you need. We give a range. We say between this dollar amount and this dollar amount, what can you spend? And then we set you up with a plan for that tuition number per month. And that is available for anyone. We ask people to apply early because those spots are limited, but we are really accommodating. We try to make sure that nobody's priced out of a spiritual education. Like, this topic should be very accessible for people because I believe that the divine is speaking through the sky, and like anyone should have access to understanding what it's saying, right? So anyway, that is a bit about the program. I hope that this has been useful for you. If there are any questions you have, you can look over the curriculum content on the page, on the year 1 page. There's more information there. Check out the FAQ section for more questions. Email us info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see some of you in class soon. I think this is going to be a really powerful program because it's also starting right as Pluto's moving into Aquarius. And within the year, we're going to have a Uranus-Pluto trine with Uranus in Gemini. These airy signatures and the connection between Uranus and Pluto make for a very powerful year to advance our understanding of astrology. So it's a great election year for studying, and I hope to see some of you in class soon.